him. There are a lot of features of the game that they haven't announced yet.
There is. That probably means they're still a long way off before the game comes out. However, Jay always does a great job at answering the fans' questions very honestly, very directly.
Absolutely. Well, we'll look forward to hearing much more about Diablo in the months to come. But our uninterrupted coverage of BlizzCon continues here on DirecTV. We have a lot more panels coming up this afternoon. A lot of StarCraft 2 news that may break this afternoon in the StarCraft 2 lore panel. So you guys are going to want to tune in for that. And, of course, tonight we've got Ozzy Osbourne performing live. Kat and I had the chance to see the sound check a couple nights ago. Ozzy is going to rock out with a full set. I hear he's going to play close to 45 minutes live in front of the fans here.
He is. And the other day when he was doing his test, he actually, it was 120 decibels is what they measured the sound at. In the store, in that hall, everything was falling off the walls. It's going to be a rockin' show, I'm telling you.
Absolutely. Well, the fans are excited about that, but they're also excited to walk around BlizzCon and see what else is out there. And Joe Garcia, our field reporter, is meeting with the fans, looking at the booths. Joe, what have you found for us now?
Hey guys, I'm on the floor and we're here with one of Blizzard's partners. It's Heroic Prince. And what exactly is Heroic Prince?
Heroic Prince is a company that we've created to allow the user to pull their tune from the armory and create a unique, customized poster of their character from the game.
Okay, so how in detail is this? Does it have just the character? Does it have the realm they're part of? Is it a guild shot? What exactly is it?
Basically, all of the information that is contained in the armory is where we draw upon. So whatever your character is decked out in terms of gear is the pose that would be pulled out from the armory at that point, where then you can position in any one of a couple of dozen different ways in terms of stances and what have you.
And I'm looking behind me. There's a couple posters up on the wall, and we actually have one right down here. And this is someone's actual character. So these are the kind of things that people are printing, and they're having it shipped to their home. Is that correct? Exactly.
What you have here is a standard movie size poster, 27 by 40 inch, and this goes for $24.95. We can then we can ship within 2 business days after ordering, and then FedEx directly to your house rolled up in a tube.
And I've noticed that they have interesting backgrounds, and I saw this card. There's some art on here. Is this exclusive just to BlizzCon?
Yes, it is. Blizzard has been kind enough to supply us with this art that we're offering just as an exclusive for BlizzCon, and after today we'll be retiring this image.
And people are going to ask this. Everybody wants the class picture. Do you see the guild being a future possibility for print?
We certainly hope so. We're working on that right now, both from a functionality standpoint and a Blizzard approval standpoint.
And the beauty is that people here at BlizzCon get to see it first. It's still currently in beta testing, so it's not going to be available as of yet, but when can the patrons when will it be available to everybody else?
That's the $64,000 question. As we all know, Blizzard doesn't release things until they're ready, and as a Blizzard partner, we feel the same way. We're using this show as a testing ground to get feedback from our consumers and put the final Blizzard polish on the site and the user interface, and we hope to be launched sometime next month.
And will this be the actual website, printwarcraft.com?
Yes, it will.
So keep that in your favorites, printwarcraft.com. Check them out as soon as they become available. Get your prints, and back to you guys at the desk.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Joe. Lots of great exhibitors out there. But now joining us here at the DirecTV BlizzCon desk is Rob Pardo, the Executive Vice President of Game Design at Blizzard. Rob, you broke a lot of big news yesterday about the brand new BattleNet, which will be coming first to StarCraft 2. One thing that I think a lot of people have been talking about is the idea now that fans will actually be able to create maps for StarCraft 2 and actually sell them on a marketplace and kind of create their own little business around StarCraft user-generated content, right?
Exactly. That was one of the big announcements we made. And the whole concept is really, you look at the Warcraft 3 mod community was really vibrant and actually spawned games that you see on other services now. Like a really good example is all the different tower defense games that you see, like on PlayStation Network, like Pixel Junk Monsters,
Yep. Right.
Or you look at like Plants vs. Zombies. Really that game mechanic came out of the Warcraft 3 mod community. So we feel like, if we can do a marketplace where people can actually even put in more of a development budget against these sort of maps, you can almost start looking at StarCraft 2, as a development platform for people to make games.
Have you considered giving the StarCraft map community advanced access to the map creator before the game comes out?
Something we've talked about, like we haven't decided yet, but if the editor is at a good enough state and we feel like we can do it, we might be able to do it during the beta.
Right.
But at the very least, though, they would get it at release. And that's one of the things I announced, too, is that the marketplace isn't going to be live at launch.
Okay.
So it'll be something that's going to come probably like 6 to 12 months after launch.
Right.
So map creators will have plenty of time to kind of beta test maps, try things out, get used to the editor before they actually put anything up for sale.
Makes sense. I know one thing I noticed is that you had a slide in your presentation that had a Counter-Strike graphic, and you were talking a little bit about that. I'm very involved in the Counter-Strike community and the mod community inside of that. What are some things that you learned from looking at what they've done?
Well, I mean, a lot of what we learned is just, you know, if you can help enable map creators and amateur game designers,
right.
you know, they'll be able to make pretty amazing maps, or, you know, get full-blown games for that matter.
Right.
You know, and a lot of what we saw with Counter-Strike really already happened with Defense in the Ancients, which is the biggest mod that comes out of the Warcraft 3 community. I mean, especially when you go over to Asia, you know, like 90% of the game rooms, you know, when they're playing War 3, they're playing Defense in the Ancients.
Right.
So, you know, it's just not as well known because we never really turned it into a box product like Counter-Strike did.
Excellent. All right, well, we are on Twitter, and we got a lot of Twitter questions for you, Rob. So if you guys have a Twitter question, you can send it to us at Jeff Keighley here from my account. Let's go to this one here, which comes from Daniel. And Daniel says, please ask Rob, what is he most excited about with all the new projects coming up, and why, if he can say? Now, you're obviously in charge of game design for all these Blizzard titles. What gets you most excited from a game design perspective about what's coming up?
You know, that's like a really tough one, because like one of the things I love about my job is that any game I'm working on, I get really, really excited about that, you know, which I think is one of the things that, you know, hopefully makes me really effective at my job, is that, you know, whether or not it's, you know, like right now I'm doing a lot of work on BattleNet. Before that, I did a lot of the work on, you know, a lot of work on the StarCraft 2 campaign. You know, those are both very exciting. And then, you know, probably the thing that's most exciting to me right now is, you know, the game that I'm most involved with, which is the unannounced MMO,
right.
which you're not going to be able to pull out of me today, but
right.
It's really, really, really cool.
So you are one of the superstars Mike talked about that's been assigned to make this project a reality?
Yeah, you're being kind. But yeah, I mean, the idea of the new team, though,
right.
I mean, it's a lot of the leadership came from the World of Warcraft team. So
right.
It's really exciting that we can take all the things we learned from actually making World of Warcraft and imagine what we would do if we got to do it all over again.
Now, you know, everyone knows that it'll be in a new universe, so it's not just, you know, World of StarCraft or something like that. Can you tell us a bit about, you know, from an MMO perspective, you guys have done so much with World of Warcraft, you learned a lot from it. This MMO, I mean, are you really trying to pioneer sort of a new type of MMO with this game, or it's not just going to be in a World of Warcraft reskin to a new universe,
That's like a tricky question to try to get information about the
I don't know.
MMO. What is that?
No, I'm just trying to, I'm trying to think, obviously, for you guys, everything you guys do, you like to push the limits, right?
Here's what I can say is I'll talk you through a little bit of like the process of even determining what it is.
Right.
You know, which is, you know, it's really challenging. You know, what should the next MMO be? So what we do, and we kind of do this with every time we're going to kick off a new game, but it's a little bit different this time, where I actually pulled, you know, I did a whole bunch of different brainstorming meetings, and I did, you know, like 9 random developers across the studio that are interested in being involved, and we just sit around the table and kind of pitch ideas at each other. And then, you know, and then I do it with a new group and then another group. And we kind of went through this whole list, you know, like obviously, you know, we kind of concepted out what, you know, a Universe of StarCraft game might look like.
Right.
We talked about what a World of Warcraft 2 game might look like. We talked about Diablo games. We talked about MMO RTSs. We talked about MMO FPSs. We talked about all kinds of different ideas. And then what happens is, you know, as those meetings progress, certain ideas solidify and get more and more people excited. So it kind of just narrows down until suddenly you get a game or a game concept that everyone around the table's kind of nodding their head and everyone's excited.
Right.
Because what would happen previous to that is someone around the table would be like, yeah, I'm not really into that, or that's not that interesting. You know, like either, you know, one of our artists, one of our designers, programmers, whatever else, and then we finally came up with an idea that everyone's like, yeah, that's the game we should make.
How much has that changed? You know, you've been working on it for a little while now. Do you know what the game is and what the concept is? Are you deep into production, or is it a point now where things can still veer and change quite a bit?
We're at a phase now where, so like kind of our first year on it was very much kind of the technology, or build a lot of technology. And, you know, kind of the second year we started bringing in a lot more of the artists, start really developing out the concepts a lot more. And now I'm really hoping like this is going to be the big upcoming year where we really start putting a lot of game design and solidifying all the game systems, because we're starting to really prototype a lot of stuff. stuff because there's enough technology, enough art now that we can kind of go to that next stage.
Wow, exciting.
In a related question, I mean, you were on the WoW team as well, now you're on this team, and both those games took a very long time to put out. How do you design and plan for a game that you know is, 5 years down the road?
Right. It's, well, the important thing is what I feel like happens at a lot of studios is they try to design everything up front,
right,
and then they go out and have, a production team do it to spec. And at Blizzard, that's not really the way we approach things. So I try to first come up with what is kind of the big concepts. What's really fun about the game, what's interesting. If you look at something like World of Warcraft, we were building off other MMOs, but at the same time we had these concepts of killing with a purpose. We wanted to have really content driven by quests. These are all things that we knew up front. We didn't necessarily knew how many quests we're going to have. We didn't know how the quest systems would be designed, but we knew those were the core concepts. You look at StarCraft 2, we kind of did the same sort of things. What are the things that we absolutely want to do with that game before we ever design a unit? And the units got designed, a year, 2 years later after, kind of the initial kickoff.
Okay.
So you kind of just do it in phases. And, the game becomes more and more kind of solid as you go along. And it's actually funny because I actually like more the end of the projects than the beginnings. Because the beginning of the project, it's all blue sky and everything's possible, which sounds really, really fun, right? But it means no one wants to make a decision. Because the moment you make your first decision means you just cut off a whole bunch of things that you can't do anymore. So no one ever wants to make decisions at the beginning of the project.
Now, Rob, another question that's coming from Twitter, at Jeff Keeley. Kyle asks, when the new MMO comes out, what will make me still want to play World of Warcraft, and will there be a payment discount for having both? I'm sure you're probably going to talk about the business of it, but it's an interesting question, I think.
Yeah.
You have this huge community for World of Warcraft. So is the idea with the new MMO to move some of that community to this new MMO, or is it to appeal to a completely different audience? How are you thinking about it?
Again, it's kind of one of those things that the way we've always approached games at Blizzard is we just try to make the best games we can. We're not necessarily thinking of the standpoint of, oh, we think 50% of the WoW audience will convert and this is how it's going to work. I mean, we don't really think like that. Imagine that WoW was done by another game company. It wouldn't necessarily be about stealing those customers or not doing it. It's just, make the best MMO we can. And if people continue to play WoW and we get a new audience playing the new MMO, right, that's great. If we cannibalize WoW, well, someone's going to eventually, so it might as well be us. But it's not so much like we're targeting the WoW fan base in any particular way.
Well, I mean, do you think there'll be a cannibalization? Because, a lot of things that have been interesting with World of Warcraft is you keep maintaining, 11.5 million people around the world playing it. One tweet that actually just came in from Cadwin says, will WoW see a complete update graphically wise in conjunction with the new expansion? I think a lot of people are wondering, you do these expansions, but is there ever going to be a complete overhaul of the game with, all new graphics? Or how do you think about sort of the World of Warcraft beats going forward?
The way we were approaching graphic upgrades is kind of iteratively. We're not really going to go in and just put in a whole new graphics engine one day. I mean, it'd actually be, I don't even know it would be possible at this point because you have to recreate every piece of art you've ever seen in World of Warcraft through all the expansions. So it kind of gets prohibitive. And the other thing we've kind of seen with other MMOs that have done this is even though you might be able to do a character with more polygons or with, more shader technology or something like that. And it may be, theoretically better, but it's different. And people get very attached to their characters. And I've seen so many MMOs where they do a graphic update with theoretically better art, but people don't like it because their character doesn't look like they think it should look anymore. So what we're really trying to do is just kind of iteratively improve it, improve the water, improve the terrain, and kind of, each expansion we kind of make some graphical upgrades to the game.
That was one of the comments we had, is that the people who are playing Cataclysm, that the water looks so much better. Is that one of the changes that you made?
Yeah, that's one of the changes we made.
Interesting.
New water. Now let me ask you about one thing that in the MMO community, there's been a lot of talk about the new Star Wars MMO and how they're doing full voice for all the characters.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Because you guys are known for doing great stories in your games. Do you think, full voice is something for the new MMO that you're thinking about? Doing storytelling in a more sort of cinematic way?
Well, I think it's a really admirable feature, and obviously there's the opportunity to make the game much more immersive when there's that much voice in the game and that many characters. But I think there's going to be a challenge with it though too, because we considered it. But one of the things that happens when you have that much voice, it really kind of limits your ability to iterate on the content and make changes on the fly, because you have to do the voice recording really far in advance.
Yeah.
So if you look our quest designers in the last 2 weeks of the beta, they're still making changes and adding new quests. You can't do that if you're going to do all the voice, all the voice acting ahead of time too. So I think there's kind of pros and cons to it.
All right, we'll have to wait and see what happens. Yeah. Excellent. All right, well, let's head back to Twitter here and see if there's another question. This is a question from Imelet, and he says, please ask Rob why Blizzard are endorsing commercial StarCraft 2 mods while they have just outlawed commercial World of Warcraft mods. Is that true?
One more time?
Question is, are you endorsing commercial StarCraft 2 mods, but you just outlawed commercial World of Warcraft mods? Is that true?
I don't recall outlawing commercial World of Warcraft. Oh, I know what you're talking about. I know, okay. Well, yeah, because, the thing with that is that, we're obviously not making any money off people that are doing third-party things for WoW, and it's, kind of a... it's not really allowed to go out and make stuff around World of Warcraft without licensing it from us. It's really us just protecting our intellectual property, which I'm sure, you're familiar with DirecTV with kind of all the same concepts.
Yep, absolutely.
There was one question someone had in our community, nice, was there's achievements that are going to be, and they're going to be in Battle.net, they're going to be, across your entire account. There have been titles and rewards that are associated in WoW with achievements. Is that going to be something that will be accessible in other games as well, or maybe there will be some type of prize for Battle.net achievements?
Well, the approach we're kind of taking on achievements is within each individual game, there'll be kind of rewards that make sense for that game. Right. So in the case of StarCraft 2, it's going to be kind of the 2D avatars and decals. Yeah. Within World of Warcraft, it might be pets, it might be titles, things like that. Right. So I'm not sure what it'll be for Diablo 3, but we'll kind of do the approach for that. As far as like the account-wide achievements, like that stuff we'll probably talk about a little more in the future once we talk more about like what real-life ID profiles look like and then what that system will look like. But we do have some cool ideas for that too.
Excellent.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much, Rob. It's great to have you here live at BlizzCon. And now we're going to head out to the field. Joe Garcia is with someone else here in the convention center. Joe, who do you have?
Hey, guys. We're here live on the floor, and we're at Fingerprints with Ed Freeze. Ed, what exactly are these things? Because I'm seeing people carrying them around, and I'm trying to figure out what exactly you need to do to get one of these.
What we do is pretty amazing. We will make your World of Warcraft character with your gear, exactly the way you look in the game, as a statue. You go to our website, figureprints.com, just type in the name of your character. We pull up a 3D render of your guy with the data out of the armory, and our 3D printing machines will print in color your character exactly the way you want to have it.
You just said it prints that. It's in 3D. How does it print it? A picture is printed. This is an actual statue. You can touch it. It's 3D.
Yeah, these machines, this machine behind us is a 3D color printer. There's only one company in the world that makes these devices, and they basically lay down a layer of plaster powder and then print ink into it. And it just does it over and over and over again. 250 layers per inch as it builds this up. Something like this would take about 12 hours to print. And when it comes out of the printer, it looks like this. It's a beautiful color thing.
You said it takes 12 hours to make something like that. I see you have a smaller one over here. How long does something like that take to print?
So this is what we call a figure pet. These take about, well, the printer runs about 1 inch an hour. So this would be an hour, hour and a half to make.
For that little guy.
Yeah. And
where can people get these?
It's all on figureprints.com. Go to our website. You can create your character. These are $129.95. It's a great deal for a beautiful statue. These are $29.95. These are limited edition sculptures. And
are they only available here at BlizzCon, or can they still get those online?
There's a special Murky we have over in the case that's only available here at BlizzCon. They sold out the first day. They found a few more. They're selling out today. They're very limited edition.
And that's Ed Freeze with Fingerprints here on the floor. Back to you guys at the desk.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Joe. Yeah, Fingerprints is very cool. You can get the little 3D printed version of your character from World of Warcraft. And joining us now is Paul Sands from Blizzard for Day 2 of BlizzCon. Yes. Paul, let's talk a bit about some of these amazing exhibitors you have here, and companies like Fingerprints and all these guys that really license the Blizzard merchandise. How important is it for you to find these partners that can do these really cool things set around the universe?
Well, it's important to us, and a big part of it for us is we don't put out games every other month. Right. And so the players...
Not even every year sometimes.
Well, exactly. So for the players, they love these franchises. They oftentimes are wanting to get more. And so for us, we look at it from the perspective that we want to feed them snacks in between the meals, I guess is the way I like to say it. And so with all these various games, they have an opportunity to steep themselves more in the universe. If you're reading the novels as an example, you can get a feel for what's happening in other kind of areas of the universe. We also sometimes will kill characters off in those books, so it's important to read them, and it helps really progress the storyline, and everybody seems to really like them.
Another one of your partners is on the floor, which is Future Plus. I believe that's how they're called, Future Plus magazine. And they're going to be publishing the new World of Warcraft magazine.
Yes.
And so is that going to be written by them, written by Blizzard? Is it a partnership? What's going on with that?
We really view it as a partnership. The folks that they've assembled on their editorial team are incredible. Some folks that really have great track records in gaming, and so we're really excited about that opportunity. But then on the other side, we have a whole creative development group in our company that works specifically with our licensed partners, and they're able to work as a middleman between the game development teams and the various groups within the organization. So we really feel like we're going to be able to pull in the Blizzard flavor to it. It's going to be a great magazine. We've already started seeing some of the proofs, and I got to tell you, I don't think there's anything out there that's quite like this, and I think people that end up subscribing are going to really love it. It'll help them with their gameplay experience and help them become even more steeped in the world.
Are you planning on releasing any type of exclusive information in it, or just like more in-depth coverage than what you're able to get online?
It's going to be both,
okay.
Really. I mean, we're certainly going to keep some exclusive information for our various normal PR channels,
right,
and for shows like this and other places, but there will be things that will be first-timers in that magazine, and I think it's going to be exciting for folks because they won't be able to get some of it anywhere else.
I'm excited. When is that supposed to launch?
I think our first issue is supposed to be late this year.
Excellent.
So we're excited about that.
I will have to subscribe.
Now, you guys are, as you mentioned, you're doing books, you're doing a lot of great things in terms of supporting the content of these games. But you guys do such amazing cinematics. I know a lot of the fans stand here and watch them, and you are doing a World of Warcraft movie. But have you guys thought about doing, longer form versions like, animated TV show or movie based around some of these game franchises?
Well, I can tell you this. The cinematics team certainly has.
Right.
Yeah.
They, I think that's definitely an aspiration for them, and what we're really trying to do is get that team to a place where they can fulfill all of the different needs for all the different game teams, both for the in-game and the fully rendered, or the pre-rendered, I should say, cinematics. Once they get to that point, then we'll see. I mean, they certainly have the skill set from my perspective. They're telling incredible stories in these short 2, 3, 4, 5 minute cinematics, and so I think they've got the chops, and maybe, and I say maybe, there'll be an opportunity for some input from them on the movie. We'll see how it works. Sam obviously will have a big say in that, so
right.
I think they're going to be on their best behavior trying to convince him.
Yeah, well, the stuff they do is just so phenomenal. And I know, here at the show, you showed some new footage from, World of Warcraft Cataclysm and Diablo. It was all in-game stuff. When are we going to see another big cinematic from the cinematics team? I assume they're going to do a big open for Cataclysm that we'll see at some point, right?
Well, we haven't said when they're going to bring their next big thing yet.
Okay.
What I would tell you is the cinematics that we're seeing for StarCraft 2 are absolutely sick.
Absolutely.
And maybe that's biased because that's my favorite game, but no, they're really good. And that team, I always have a high level of confidence, as does the rest of our company, that whenever they deliver something, it's going to be the top-notch experience. And so we're geeked up about seeing that next, and I'm excited to see what everybody's reaction is.
Absolutely.
We saw the preview on the cinematics team yesterday, and it looked to us from what we were seeing is that the cinematics team is maybe as big as your other development teams. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. They're well over 100 people in that group at this point.
Right.
And we've grown that team not only because they're doing the pre-rendered that they've always done,
right,
but they're also doing a lot of the in-game cutscenes for StarCraft 2.
Yeah.
And so all that work you see there is being done by folks that have traditionally done our cinematics. And so I think what's happening is it's really raising the bar on what you're going to experience in the actual gameplay experience. So it should be good.
Good.
That's all right. Well, let's go to another tweet here for you, Paul.
Yep.
This one comes from Ann, and she says, one more comment. Can you make a World of Warcraft version for a mobile phone? Like the LG View, tired iPhones having all the fun. I know last year, I remember there was some leak of like a supposed kind of World of Warcraft for iPhone that people were talking about. When you think of the mobile platforms, how does Blizzard approach that?
Well, first I would tell you, don't believe everything you read on the internet.
Exactly, right.
That's for sure.
It's all true.
Because I don't think that one's going to be able to happen anytime soon.
There's that amazing video, though, where they pretended to have the whole 3D World of Warcraft working.
Yeah, definitely. Well, what we have done is we've put out a mobile authenticator to help protect accounts. We've also put out the mobile armory, so people are going to be able to access their characters and check them out. And there's going to be more in that vein. So I think that there's going to be some cool things that people can come to expect from us on that. But the actual full game, not yet, and I would say it's going to be a while.
What about iPhone games, though? Because you look at, BioWare is now off doing like a Mass Effect for iPhone. I mean, a lot of game companies are getting very excited about iPhone just as a platform for original titles.
We're excited about it too, but what I would tell you is that one of the key things that helps Blizzard do what we do is focus. And we've got a number of games going right now. We've got, the World of Warcraft stuff, StarCraft, Diablo, our unannounced title. And then we've got the cinematics team. We've got all the different things that are going on with Battle.net. That's a lot to have on any company's plate. And so the idea of then trying to add these other types of games, even though they're smaller on the iPhone comparatively to what we do, it's then starting to stretch our focus, and we don't want to have a situation where we're going to start faltering and taking our eye off the ball of the really key projects we have.
In a related question, I know that we have the Armory on iPhone, which has been very popular, but have you considered putting it out on other platforms like the Android phones? Is that something you're talking about internally?
I think right now, not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, well, let's go to another tweet question that's coming in for you. A lot of these questions, this comes from Thormore. He says, will BlizzCon ever come to the U.S. East Coast? I think, a lot of fans are wondering where BlizzCon will go in the future. What can you tell your fans around the world about plans for BlizzCon going forward?
Yeah, well, with BlizzCon, one of the big reasons we do it in Anaheim, candidly, is because we're utilizing our employees to staff the show. We've got over 500 customer service people here alone working the show, not to mention all of our developers are here, all of our management is here. To be able to take this show on the road with this size and complexity will be difficult. Now, what I will say is that this year we've got almost 30,000 people here live in person. And this building, while awesome, is feeling like it's going to be bursting at the seams soon. So I would envision us needing to look at other places potentially if we decide to grow it and to bring more players in. So if that happens, then we're going to have to really start seriously looking at other venues, and it could go other places in the U.S. and it could go overseas, candidly, because we have players everywhere, and if we're going to travel and we've got to take a bunch of folks, well,
why not go?
Why not go and do it other places too? So certainly a possibility, but we only do it once a year, so we'll see.
Excellent. All right.
Jeff and I are willing to travel.
We'll go wherever you need us to go.
We're
ready to go, Paul.
Good.
Ready to get on the plane. All right. Another
business class, I'm sure.
For
the two of you.
We'll talk about it later. Exactly. All right. Let's go to another tweet here from Jared. Jared wants to know, any consideration in creating a cinematic DVD compiling all of the StarCraft, Warcraft, and Diablo material in the future? Have you guys thought? I know sometimes you put out DVDs with some of the collector's editions, but what about a compilation, I guess, of all the cinematics from Blizzard history?
Well, interestingly enough, we had done that already a handful of years ago, but that hasn't been refreshed with all of the new games and new cinematics. So I would say that it was cool last time, and I would envision that we'll think it's cool next time. So it's all a matter of getting enough content to justify that, and I would say after we put out the next couple of games, it's probably going to feel right again.
All right, good stuff.
Maybe with some of those great StarCraft 2 cinematics you're talking about.
Or we can just put that out by itself,
Yeah.
Well, what's cool now is with StarCraft 2, you're doing the cinematics, inside of the game as well.
Yeah.
Is the cinematics team, are they doing, full-scale rendered cinematics for StarCraft 2 as well, or is it going to all be in-game?
No. You're going to get some of the patented Blizzard cinematics, pre-rendered cinematics for sure.
Absolutely.
I couldn't imagine us delivering a game without it.
Yeah, well, some of the ones that they put out already for StarCraft 2 have looked phenomenal, so I can't wait to hear more about it. All right, we've got another tweet question for you. The forums are blowing up for you. This comes from Jeff Tuck, love his name. He says, ask Paul, what is the coolest product that you've ever come across for Blizzard games? Do you have one favorite licensed item out of everything that's been done?
We're talking about licensed items or our games themselves?
Coolest product, I guess, I don't know. I guess it could go either way.
I'm going to give you both.
Okay.
Wow.
All right.
Go for it.
So the very best game, in my opinion, that Blizzard's ever made is StarCraft.
Right.
That was an easy one, right?
Exactly.
Everybody knows that's my favorite by far. I think our best game in the future is going to be StarCraft 2. I know that sounds
Have you played through StarCraft 2 yet?
I have played quite a bit of it, but I have not played all the way through. They haven't let us yet.
Okay.
So what they do when we're working towards bringing the game to completion, they have us play the cinematic, or not the cinematics, the missions, I should say, that they feel comfortable with us playing, and they also hold some back because they want to have fresh eyes. So what happens is they'll say, okay, this team is going to play these particular missions, work through those, give your feedback, and then they'll go back and work on it, and then they'll bring fresh eyes in. So somewhere in that process, you get brought in, your team, and you'll get to see it for the first time. Hopefully it's later in the process so you can see it even more polished. But we haven't gotten to the point where we're getting into the later ones yet, because now that we have a little bit more time, they're really going back and doing another Blizzard polish run on that. As it relates to the licensed products, I would say, I know this is going to sound real cutesy, but I love the plush Murlocs that we do.
Right, yeah.
And
Very
my kids
popular.
do also, and I think a lot of folks around here are too, because we've got 3 new colors. So those, I love those ones. I love Frostmourne, the sword as well. Got
Great
that
sword,
in my
yeah.
office, proudly hung. So those are the ones that are probably personal favorites, but we have a lot of good ones.
Excellent. All right.
I had a follow-up question on that. I just forgot what it was. You're talking about StarCraft 2.
That's good,
Well,
Kat.
it's another Twitter question. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. We got to go to a panel right now. Anyways, it's the World of Warcraft Dungeons and Raids panel. Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
Paul.
And now let's head on over to the main panel room to learn more about the future of World of Warcraft.
Welcome to the World of Warcraft Dungeons and Raids open question and answer panel with Corey Stockton, lead content designer, and Scott Mercer, lead encounter designer for World of Warcraft.
Hey guys, how's everyone doing? Having a good time? Awesome. So me and Scott are going to talk to you guys a little bit about what we've got planned for the Dungeons and Raids lineup for Cataclysm. So let's get right into it. So this time we wanted to take a little bit of time here at the beginning and give you guys a little bit of background about how we actually do this stuff. How do we make the dungeons? How do we make the raids? How do we script them? How do we get all that content to you guys? So we're going to break it down through a few different things and go through how that happens. First off, then we'll get into some previews of all the new content. So everything starts with an idea. We've got a team of really, really talented creative designers on the WoW team, and basically we get together, we figure out where's this dungeon going to be, who's going to be there, what is the player going to do, and really is it an idea that's really cool enough that we want to actually go there, do a dungeon, and make it happen. There's a ton of places that we could do this stuff. You know, the lore is deep. There's tons of places we could go to place our dungeons and raids, but we really want to pick a place they're going to want to find out more information about, some cool bosses to have fights against. So everything basically just kicks off with the idea. From here, we basically go to a layout phase. If you've been to past BlizzCons, I think I've talked about this a few times before. We use a 2D layout tool, and we put the whole dungeon down on paper. Figure out which way are players going to go, where are the bosses going to be, what exactly is the flow going to be? How is the player going to work their way through this dungeon? Is it going to be non-linear, where they can maybe have a choice, go one way or the other? Or is it going to be a straight path, and we're going to guide them through and maybe give them a little bit more of a specific story experience? And all of this stuff comes through when we're in the 2D phase. So, because at this point, we can change ideas really quickly. It's just on a piece of paper. We can still change it around, decide what we want to do. We also pick where we want the points of interest in the dungeon. Where are they going to be? Where do we want to have like a really cool bridge, or maybe like a series of doors that are going to open with really awesome animations? Like, where do we want to pull the player's eye? We decide all those things here while we're in this phase. So here you can see an example of one of these layouts. This is Grim Batal Dungeon, which will actually be coming in Cataclysm. So you can see a quick view here, like all those bees on the map, those are actually where the bosses are going to be. You can even see in some cases like where we want the boss to path. You can see some arrows kind of directing where the player is going to go. And this is the basic form of this. We start with a layout like this, and then we decide, okay, who are these bosses going to be? Are they going to use the room? Are they going to use their environment as part of the fight? And when we decide something like that, it needs to happen here, because those are assets that we've got to generate and have ready to go for the fight. So here's another example. This is Icecrown Citadel coming in patch 3.3. You guys are going to get to take on Arthas. So granted, Icecrown is definitely a special situation because this is a dungeon that I think everyone has a lot of passion for. It's a place we really want to get to. So here you can see a look at the layout. This one's a little bit more detailed. It's got bosses and stuff. This one has floors. There's going to be levels in the Icecrown dungeons, or the Icecrown raid, since you're going to be doing so much stuff. Scott's actually going to talk a little bit later. We've got a whole section where we're going to cover what you can actually expect to find in Icecrown raid. So here's another layout here. This one is actually of the Halls of Origination. This is one of the 2 Old Doom dungeons players are going to get a chance to go through in Cataclysm. You can see here this dungeon definitely has a more detailed layout. It's non-linear, so players come in at the beginning there. They can take a right, head outside to that desert-looking area. They could also go to the left. Killing both these bosses on either side then activates an elevator that takes them up to the 3rd floor. So all those in that 3rd floor there, you can see there's 4 chambers. There's 4 bosses. This is actually a huge dungeon. It's got 7 bosses total in it. So, you know, some dungeons we just want to have a little bit more of an epic feel. This was Old Doom. We really felt like there was a lot of lore here. There was a lot of things we wanted to talk about. So this was a place where we could go ahead and add a couple extra bosses, and it's worth the work to do it here. So from this phase, we basically go into what we call a blockout. A blockout is a really basic form of the dungeon, but now it's in 3D. This basically means we can get in there in the game, we can play around in it, we can get a feel for the space, make sure there's enough room to fit the boss, the creatures that we want to spawn there, and make sure they fit. This is a really important time for the dungeon because this is when the scale changes. The scale is super, super important. We don't want to end up with a dungeon that's so big that players end up having to run super far distances, but like say when they wipe and they come back and they've got to run a really long ways. That's something that we don't like any more than you guys do. You can kind of see an example of a new idea we went with Ulduar with the teleporters that would let you quickly get back to the fight you were trying to get to, but still have a large dungeon. That concept of teleporters, definitely something that we'll be carrying forward into Icecrown Citadel. You'll definitely see that idea again there. So once we get to this phase of the blockout, it basically goes off to an artist at that point, because we feel really good about it. We feel strong about the dungeon. We're ready to go. Let's get it to the artists and let them start working their magic on it. So here's a couple examples of a blockout. This is what we like to call designer art here. Gladly, you guys don't ever have to play in any of these, but here you can just see it's just basically a quick look at what the insides of a dungeon like this would look like, just enough that we can get it in the game and make it playable. So this is a view of the Old Doom dungeon that you saw a little earlier on the layout. So that's where you come in, you can choose to go left or right, and then there's an elevator shaft there in the middle. These are the kind of things we want to just get started early. Here's another view. This is a section actually in Icecrown Raid. And then I've got an in-game shot of just to show kind of the level of detail of how low level this stuff is. It's just kind of a quick view of what it looks like when we're working our way through. Now from here, basically we can kind of get into things like dungeon interaction. And this is where we talk about things like elevators, doors, and things that move around and kind of like give the players a chance to interact with the dungeon in a different way. So these would be things like, remember, like say the bridge from Serpent Shrine Cavern that led to Lady Baj. That would be an example of an interactive item. We have to think about those things early and get them to the artist so we can make sure that we have tech that supports what we want to do. Malagos, where the floor blows up underneath you and everyone lands on the drakes. That's something that we really have to think about and decide, do we want to spend the time on that? Is it worth it to do something like that? And I think in that case it really is, because it plays into the fight so well. At that moment, the floor breaks, everyone falls, people that haven't done the fight freak out. And you know, that's something that we want, some of those moments. In some places they fit, and we just have to think about them early and make sure that they go in the right places. And these are things that we work really closely with the art team on. I mean, without having the support of the art team, there's no way we could finish all the things that we want to do for any of these dungeons. And then from here, it basically goes to art. They start off with these amazing concepts, and this is kind of where we get inspired of what we want to do. An example of an awesome one is actually from Utgard Keep, that in that first room there where there's all those flames blowing out of those giant furnaces. That came in as a concept piece. Originally, we just had that as, we thought it was maybe going to be a room full of blacksmiths kind of deal, just slamming some hammers on anvils. We got that piece of concept art, and we were like, oh, we've got to turn this into a whole gameplay scenario where you've got to drop these Rykul, and that's what'll actually drop the fire and allow you to work your way around the room. It's an example like that where this concept art really comes in and just helps us, take the dungeon to the next level. So at that point, we're still working really close with the art team. We're trading back and forth between the block out and the next step of that final art. And from there, it kind of moves into that next phase where we can start getting some design in there of the actual creatures, the trash, and what players are going to interact with. We've got a couple concepts here. Some art. This is a piece for Ice Crown Raid. This is a shot actually of Abyssal Maw. In the dungeon in Abyssal Maw, which you get to in our new zone, the Sunken City of Ashir, this is one of the first dungeons. We have an elevator inside of the dungeon, and the elevator actually fills with water and moves you up to the next level, and this is a shot of that. I think anyone who's done Old War is familiar with this one. So this is how we started out with the rocket train in Oldwar. We had an idea that we knew we wanted to do a kind of a transport or a track, but we didn't really know what would it look like, how would it play out. And it's concept art like this that kind of gets us to that point. So now we're going to get into encounter design, and I'm going to hand it over to Scott here, and he's going to give you guys a little bit of info about how we bring all the creatures to life.
Hi, everyone. So the very first thing we do when we start talking about an encounter is actually just sort of brainstorming creative ideas. We get 5 to 7 designers in a dimly lit room, no windows, and we just start throwing out crazy ideas. Now, these ideas can really come from anywhere. It might be what the boss looks like. We have an idea for, we see something really cool in the boss, whether it's a really cool hand, like he's got ends and blades, so we know that he's going to do some kind of sword attack. It might be the room. The room might inspire us. In some cases, we actually have technology that can inspire us. Like in the Lich King experience, we found out that vehicles were a really big part of the expansion. And a programmer came in and explained to us, well, it turns out you can put vehicles on top of vehicles. And there was like this light bulb that went on in the designer bullpen where we all thought, okay, if we can do vehicles on vehicles, we are so doing Voltron. And that turned into Memoron. So during brainstorming, one of the things we really have to do early on is identify what new art we need and what new technology we need. So we knew we were doing some kind of Voltron boss, but we knew we were going to need need brand new models for that and a host of new technology to support vehicles on vehicles. Other things we of course have to answer is what makes the encounter cool. What's going to make making sure you're not in the fire this time different than all the other times you've been doing it? What makes the tank and spank not just the tank and spank? What's going to make this council fight different than other council fights? And so that's, with every single boss, we try to find the one thing that's going to make that raid boss pop. And then another important thing as we're going through designing out an entire raid or a dungeon is we're really trying to provide you with a variety of different experiences within one zone. So we don't want to have tank and spank, tank and spank, tank and spank. We want to make sure it's like, okay, maybe you have the, easy to understand tank and spank, mix it up with some kind of ads fight, and then maybe do something a little bit crazy at the end. So once we have an idea about what we're going to do, then we actually have to start bringing it to life. So we use a proprietary tool called WowEdit. It's our own internal tool. We have a team of programmers that do an awesome job at giving us this really, really powerful tool. And the things we do with it are creature placement within dungeons. We create the spells for those creatures to cast. And we also do action scripting, which are things like them actually moving around while they're out of combat, doing things like running away, all those kinds of things. So For the first time at Blizzcon, we're actually going to show you what WoW Edit looks like, and this is a screenshot of our actual internal tool. What you see here is drag, throw, and keep. This is what a designer actually sees when we're working at our desk. What you see here are the trolls, and also the one troll that's selected up there with the blue sphere. That path you see is the actual path that a designer has created by placing all those points. So then, all these dialogues, what we can see on the right is the complete list of all the spawns within the dungeon, that tree view. And then you select that, go over to the other spawn where you do properties, and what we're showing at the bottom here is where you can actually set the action to say, hey, if you're going to spawn, why don't you path? So, and here we have another dialogue. This is actually the dialogue for creature editing, and this is actually Onyxia. This is the Onyxia that you'll see in 3.2.2 right here. This is what we see. It's got things like on your left, you have like her name, the fact that she's a dragon, what she looks like. At the bottom left is the loot. I know you guys love the loot. Up at the top right are things like how much health she has, how much damage she does. And then over on the right is her spells and abilities. So we'll go over that, because I know you've been the guys wanting to see like how we actually figure out, how we set up how much she deep breaths.
What's up with that deep breath?
So,
looks like that deep breath is random. It's weird.
Yeah, it's strange like that. So you can see here, we actually can set random ranges for abilities. Like at the very top, you see Dragon Tail Sweep. That happens every 15 to 20 seconds. There's some randomness there. So that's what sometimes confuses all of you about just how, oh, she deep breaths more. Well, some of that's just because there's a range where that happens, and sometimes you fight her and you got a little bit unlucky and she did it more. Sometimes you got lucky and she did it less. And we'll move along. And so after we've set up all these encounters, we've got it all working, then we go into a serious playtesting mode. And we play the dungeons first. One cool thing about the encounter team is that there's 5 of us. And that makes for playtesting dungeons really, really easy, although someone has to tank and someone has to heal, and we have to figure that out, and usually there's fighting about that. So we play the dungeons, go through a whole ton of iteration with the dungeons. We play it first time before anyone else sees it. You know, start doing a boss fight and goes like, oh, that went way too fast, or oh, that was way too much damage. Oh, what just happened? Sometimes that happens. And then after we get done with it, we send it off to QA. They start they're looking for bugs, but they also give us a lot of actual feedback about the dungeon. They come back and say like, hey, these were our impressions of it. This was really fun. This sucked. This was the coolest thing we've ever seen. And then you get to the point where, all right, PTR happens, and then we put everything on the PTR. We do listen to the feedback. We love hearing things on the PTR from people doing the raids, the dungeons. Although we don't say a lot, I'm one of the few people on the Dungeons and Raid team that post on the forums as Dalo, but we do actually read it all. So now I'm going to turn this back over to Corey, who's going to go through Cataclysm dungeons, and you'll really start seeing what you have coming forward in the next expansion.
Okay, let's get into the juicy stuff. So this is a slide everyone always likes to see. This is our kind of what we call like a dungeon matrix. This is a layout of a little flowchart of all the dungeons we're planning and raids that we're planning for Cataclysm. So you can see we've got a lot of raids we're planning to have at ship. We want to have 4 full raids ready to go at ship for everyone. We've always said we want to have more in-game content here than we ever had, and we plan on doing it. Grim Batal, Skywall, Firelands, something called Blackwing Descent you're going to learn a little bit more about later. Huge selection of dungeons, as well as, like we've talked about earlier, we've some old world heroics with Shadowfang Keep and Deadmines. So first dungeon we're going to hit on is Abyssal Maw. Abyssal Maw is a 5-player dungeon. It's located, like I said earlier, at Sunken City of Ashir. The entrance into Abyssal Maw is in the Sunken City. It's actually a giant vortex in the center of the zone. Getting near the vortex will actually pull you down into the elemental plane of water. From there, you can have access to the 2 separate Abyssal Maw dungeons that we're going to have. Now, there's a lot of cool story behind these dungeons. Like they're located in the dungeon floor in an essence because they're in Vashir, but the actual dungeons themselves are in the elemental plane of water. They're these ancient temples that were created by Titans for water elementals. That's what they've always been there for. But since the advent of the Cataclysm, Naga, I've heard about this stuff, moved in, and basically there's a lot of conflict happening here, and this is what players are going to have to play through. They're going to find out some new storylines about some Naga involvement with Deathwing and the Cataclysm, and I just really think it's going to be a cool place. It's definitely a mix-up, something that we'd never done before, this kind of concept of a dungeon that's underwater. We've got windows on the edges of the dungeon that actually, when you look out of them, you actually look out into the water from outside. So you might be in the dungeon, and you look out to the wall on your right, and you see creatures swimming by, and you're going to see, we're doing these really, really awesome new water effects for the game. I think you guys were able to see them in the WoW art panel yesterday. Those same water effects we're going to end up using here in this dungeon. So I just really think it's going to give players a kind of a cool, unique new experience for something that they haven't necessarily done before. And it just plays up really nice, fits in really well with Cataclysm overall. So here you've got to look at the layout of the concept here for Abyssal Maw. It's non-linear, so you come in, you can choose to go right or left. You've got a couple boss rooms on either side. That's an elevator shaft in the center there from that piece of concept art you guys saw a little earlier. Going up this elevator takes you up to the top floor where you end up fighting a final boss up there at the top. So there's a little bit of choice here. Players can choose which side they want to go, which boss they want to fight in which order, but in general they're always going to end up in the same place. Now this is an early dungeon. This is a 78 to 82. So this is one of the first dungeons you'll be seeing in the expansion. There's a couple pieces of just amazing concept art for this stuff. This is a look at one of the boss rooms from the inside looking out onto the water. You can see it's got this really unique new architecture style that we haven't used before. It's basically, where would you imagine that water elementals live? This would be that place. This is a boss room up on the top floor. And then here's a shot of that, what I was talking about, where we've got windows on the side of the dungeon that actually look out into the ocean. So it really gives the dungeon an open feel. You never really feel too enclosed. You always feel like you can just reach out and touch it. It's right there. So now we've got a little preview of some video of what this will actually look like for you guys. Just a teaser. Okay, from there we'll move on to Old Doom and the Halls of Origination. So Halls of Origination is one of two Old Doom dungeons that we'll be delivering to you guys with Cataclysm. The other dungeon is actually the Lost City of Tol'vir, which is actually going to be an exterior dungeon. Halls of Origination is an interior dungeon. Now, the name might bring back Halls of Stone. You know, I think you guys might be familiar with that stuff, Halls of Lightning from Northrend. And now, the concept of continuing that here is because this is a place that was built by the Titans, so we just thought it really fits. Basically, you're inside of an ancient temple. It's got a very kind of, it's WoW's take on what an Egyptian kind of temple would feel like. We didn't want to go with this straight Egypt style. We really wanted to put our twist on, what we think that would feel like in the world of Warcraft, something very different. Another dungeon here, this one's non-linear also. You come in, you've got a choice of a couple different paths you can take. You don't always have to play the dungeon in the same way. It might feel different every time you get here. I think that's important, something a little different. So it's Titan Dungeon. Obviously, Bran's got to be here. I mean, where else would he be, right? So you're going to definitely interact with Bran in this dungeon through a series of quests. Maybe a little less text this time. You won't have to wait so long. We'll see. We'll see what we can do. So here's a look at the layout. We looked at this one a little earlier. This is that same dungeon. This is Halls of Origination. So a lot of bosses here. We're planning 6 or 7 bosses total for the dungeon. It's just one of those we really felt like we wanted to spend that extra time on it. It's got an amazing art style. You're going to get to take a look at it in a minute. We've got a preview. So here's a look at some concept art of kind of what we're pitching. A little bit of our take on like what a Sphinx would look like from our style. And here's a shot of one of the halls. So there's a lot of this actually is an interesting piece because there's a lot of rumors going around. There's been ancient stories of the halls of origination, and that it actually, people don't really know what it is. There's been rumors that it houses a secret weapon, this giant weapon that the Alliance wants, the Horde wants, Twilight's Hammer and Deathwing want to get a hold of it, and it's you can kind of get a little hint of that here. It looks like there's some energy cables, like there's something going on here. It's not just some ancient stone building. There's definitely something else lurking here. A couple more concept pieces. And then we've got a real quick preview of some of what the inside of this is going to look like art-wise. Yep. So all of these dungeons are still work in progress. Obviously, none of the art is final, but they're getting there. So we really wanted to take, I know the shots are short, but we really just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a feel of what they're going to feel like when you get in. So next up, Blackrock Caverns. So Blackrock obviously has a ton of story with it, and it gave us a chance to reinvent a fan favorite. We knew people love Blackrock Spire, but we didn't want to go back and just take Spire and necessarily turn it into one of our heroics. We really thought, here, let's go ahead and just go full bore. We want to create a whole new dungeon for it. And there's a lot of story that goes with this. So this new instance, it's in Blackrock, is actually occupied by Twilight's Hammer. It's actually kind of like an off-site base for Deathwing. In the actual dungeon, he's actually bored a hole from the bottom of Blackrock Mountain all the way to Grim Batal. It's kind of like an underground freeway. And basically, he uses that to transport supplies back and forth between Twilight's Hammer and Grim Batal, trying to basically extend the reach of Twilight Hammer anywhere that he can get in Azeroth. And that storyline really plays up here. So this is another one of our earlier dungeons, so you're definitely going to get a chance to play through this and experience it through quest lines as well as just from the concept of doing the dungeon. You're going to find out, why is Twilight's Hammer here? What exactly do they want with Blackrock Spire? Is there something else that they're kind of trying to get out of this that's for Deathwing? Are we going to find that out? And those are the kind of things you're going to find out through the storyline here. And who knows, maybe there's more than one beast. We're not really sure. We'll have to find out. So here's a look at the layout for Blackrock Caverns. So this is a linear dungeon. This is an example of a dungeon. There's one way to work your way through it, but we have a lot of cool spots in here that we want players to hit. We've got a couple different points of interest for players to see, and it's also got a very, very specific feel to it. We really wanted to keep that feel of Blackrock Spire where there's lava flowing. When you look out into the hallways, there's bridges and caves, and it just looks like it goes on forever. It's really tall. Super, super dark brick, dark metal. That look and style is something we wanted to keep, but we also wanted to bring back, some new things. Give people something new to play through and something new to see, and you're definitely going to see that with the Twilight Hammer influence here. It definitely feels different. So we've got a video preview of Blackrock Caverns. Let's take a look at it. Right on. Okay, so now I'm going to hand this back over to Scott, and he's going to give you guys a few sneak peeks of some new raids, some new content, and some really, really nice surprises.
Thanks, Corey. So let's talk about Ice Crown Raid in 3.3 for a little bit. So of course, it'll be a 10 and 25 player raid. It'll have 31 epic. What? Did Ghostcrawler get a hold of this slide?
Who let Ghostcrawler on this thing?
Oh, okay. 12 epic bosses. We all get more sleep this way. It's for the best. So again, as Corey mentioned earlier, the waypoints from Old War proved popular, and we will use them again here because Icecrown Citadel is ginormous. Of course, you've been waiting to, we've had a lot of characters that you've seen, you've been waiting to fight. Syndragosa, you will fight her here. And of course, the Lich King's up at the top of Icecrown. You'll finally get to fight him. So I'll take you through briefly floor by floor. This is the very first floor. Something you've seen a little bit is the spire with the frozen throne on top actually runs through the entire dungeon. So when you first roll into Icecrown Citadel, you will see the bottom of the frozen throne, that huge spire. Past that, there's 2 bosses there. You go up to the second floor. Here on the second floor, you'll see at the bottom there's this little graphic, again, designer art, for an airship. So you'll board the airship. At this point, if you're Alliance, you'll be boarding on an airship with Varian Wrynn. If you're Horde, you'll be boarding on one with Saurfang the Elder. And you're actually going to race the other faction on their airship up to the top of Icecrown. Now, what this involves, it's a few of your raid members will get on cannons trying to destroy the other ship. And then there will actually be boarders coming from the other ship launching themselves via rocket packs onto your ship. You'll be fending them off. And then you have to board their ship with rocket packs to take out the mages. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Really looking forward to that. So once you get up to the third floor, then it gets really interesting because you'll have 3 different wings you can go to. There's bosses in all 3 wings. You have to defeat all 3 wings, all the bosses within there, so you can get to the final floor. We've got a Plague Works wing, we've got a Crimson Blood wing, and we've also got the wing with Syndragosa. So now if you get to the final, up the very top, here's where you get to the Frozen Throne. You'll fight Arthas. We're already working on this fight. We've got a huge amount of really cool things planned for you. Parts of this platform will actually break off, and you might fall, and if you fall, it's bad. Yeah, so really crazy stuff planned out for this one, and again, this will all be patch 3.3. Now, this is the raid. Something we did in patch 3.2, which we had the Argent Coliseum, the Crusaders Coliseum. We didn't just give you a raid, we gave you a dungeon. Well, we're going to give you dungeons here, too. Oh. Here's awesome concept art of this, by the way. You can see the spire coming up through the middle. That's what the entrance looks like. Oh, and a video preview. I skipped ahead. So as I was saying, Icecrown Dungeons, and that is not a mistake, it is S. There are 3 separate wings with 8 bosses. So we have a huge amount of content for people who love doing 5-player content. The one cool thing about it is there's actually an epic quest line that will take you from one dungeon wing to the next. As a matter of fact, you can't do the 2nd and 3rd wings until you've actually done them in order. That way you get the full story experience as you go through. But after you've done all 3, then you can go back and go into each individual wing and farm items to your heart's content. You will fight alongside Horde and Alliance heroes. Jaina makes an appearance, Sylvanas makes an appearance. And here we have the 2D layout for these 3 dungeon wings. Let you check out this for a second. And we have a preview. So now we're going to move on to some Cataclysm raids. Corey was showing you the 5-player dungeons before. So this is an interesting shot. If some of you did vanilla WoW, you might recognize what this is. This is Nefarian's room, except there's one little thing that's different about that, and that's that portal. That portal back there? It's another raid.
Oh, awesome.
So since we have flying in Azeroth, we have a raid. To get to it, you'll actually fly up into Nefarian's lair and enter in from the dungeon from there. I always thought that was going to be a cool thing. So we're calling it Blackwing Descent. And Nefarian will be returning. But it's an entirely new raid inspired by the original Blackwing lair. New art, new loot, new creatures. And also you might see some old friends as well. But here's the layout for it. So you can see at the very bottom, that's Nefarian's old room. And you come in and you have this circular pathway with all the rooms, boss rooms around that. Now we're going to go into another Cataclysm raid. It's called the Firelands. Again, a 10 and 25 player raid, and this is the elemental plane of fire. If you've been to previous panels, you've heard talk about Ragnaros is attacking Hyjal from the elemental plane of fire. Well, you'll actually take the fight to him here. It's an exterior raid zone, which we're sort of excited about. And as mentioned, it's the home of Ragnaros, the Lord of Fire. And this is the time you can actually fight Ragnaros at his full strength because he's in the elemental plane of fire. This is his home. You will take the fight to him. And here's the layout. So you can see this is an exterior area. There's a boss that's wandering around. There's bosses near lava lakes. And the big thing at the back would be Sulfuron Keep, which is where Ragnaros maintains his fortress. And here we have some more awesome pieces of art, concept art for this. These are the kind of things you'll see outside in the Firelands. And here we have some, this is concept art for what Sulfuron Keep will look like. So now I'm going to turn this back over to Corey, because we've got even more things to tell you.
I think there's one more shot here. Yeah, here's a shot of the keep. This is where you're actually going to fight Ragnaros. So, Onyxia 5th anniversary. So this is something we're planning to do to celebrate WoW's 5th anniversary. We don't have the exact date. This is going to come out sometime around November. We're still figuring out the date, but it's definitely coming. And what we've done here is gone back to Onyxia, brought her back, but we've brought her up to level 80. So she's ready to go to fight people that are, that are max level right now in the game that want to go back. And for us, this was a chance. We didn't want to bring this back necessarily as, as something that we thought, you're going to go in here and do this as a part of progression. This is something that we really thought that she was a key figure in World of Warcraft lore. For a lot of people, this is the first raid boss they ever fought against. And what better thing to do on an anniversary than bring back a fight like this and bring it back up to current times. So there's a few new mechanics here. I mean, it's still going to feel like the Onyxia fight. We didn't go in and, change things massively, but there's definitely new mechanics. She's got maybe a couple new spells, couple new things, but it's definitely going to feel like the Onyxia fight that you're used to.
There's still many whelps.
Yeah. You're definitely going to need more dots, for sure. Now, the most important part about this, probably to you guys, is the new and updated loot. So she's got an entirely new loot table, but the loot table is all based off of her original stuff. So you're going to be able to get all the tier 2 helms. They're all going to be here with their original art, but all the stats have been updated to support the current level of itemization that we have in the game. We've also, not only are the tier 2 helms updated, but also the weapons, necklaces, things like this skag. Even better, you're still going to be able to get Quell Sarar here, and there's a new version that you'll be able to get from her. And of course, don't want to forget, we've added just a little bit more deep breath randomization. Try not to stand so close together, maybe, I don't know. So here's a great shot. This is one of the coolest things you're going to get from Onyxia. This is a flying mount. And so this is an epic flying mount, and it's going to be a very rare drop. You definitely have a chance to get it, but it's pretty rare. And kind of the concept here is this is not necessarily modeled after her, but this is one of her broods, kind of in that middle phase. And you'll be able to ride her as an epic flying mount throughout anywhere in Azeroth, especially with Cataclysm coming. You could see this guy flying over the Barrens, who knows. So here's a couple shots of some of the loot. This is original loot. Helm of Wrath and the Judgment Crown off original Onyxia. You can see it's got still the full 8-piece sets on it. You can see the stats. It's a sweet 40 stamina here in this Helm of Wrath. And then this is a look at the new loot. So now we're up to 182 stamina. Helm of Wrath here, and then the Judgment Crown. You can see they've been updated to support all the current stats. They've got slots for gems. Everything's ready to go. And in some cases, we've also took the loot and made new loot to support, now that we have specs, we've got to support all the specs. So here's the Judgment Crown, broken up into 3 different versions to support all 3 different specs. And we've done this for all the loot, so everyone can have something that fits their spec. So now here's a shot of a couple weapons that are going to be dropping off in Onyxia. Now these are the original. The Obsidian Edge Blade dropped in Molten Core, but we've taken some of that loot and put it on Onyxia here to fill out her tables. Because originally she only had 2 weapons that she dropped, so we wanted to update that. So we took some Molten Core loot and put it here. So here's an example. Here's Quell Sarar, Deathbringer, and the Obsidian Edge Blade. And then here's their versions that'll be dropping on the new Onyxia. So you can see they've been massively upgraded. Yeah, there's nothing like getting a new weapon. It really helps stat increase. So we really wanted to make sure that we wanted to get people here, get them a chance to experience this encounter. So we wanted loot to make sure that people would come. And I think this is definitely going to do it. So also, we've got Onyxia Whelpling. I don't think anyone's actually seen this yet. We might have actually beat them to the punch on this one. It's good. So this is the Onyxia Whelp. So anyone who logs into the game during, we're gonna have a 2 or 3 long week phase where anyone that logs into the game will get a mail, and you'll get the Onyxia Whelp for logging in during the 5-year anniversary of WoW. Now you can't see it here, but this Whelpling actually has some really cool, unique animations. She actually tries to deep breath occasionally, every few minutes. And she fails occasionally and just ends up blowing smoke rings. But it looks really awesome. We've got custom art on it that looks great. So to close this out, the last thing we wanted to talk about is a new feature that we're planning that we haven't really talked about a lot yet, which is going to be cross-server LFG. And as you can imagine, what this is going to do is allow you to get into 5-player instances with players that are on other realms. Now the tech for this definitely supports raids, so we can definitely do this with raids, but we're going to kick it off with 5-player, see how it goes, and we're definitely going to open it up from there. It's going to start out working on your battle groups, and you know, the same way that you can expect it's something very similar to the way Battlegrounds work now. With cross-server Battlegrounds, we're looking to do something like that very similar here. This is definitely something that is going to help pugs a ton. So if you can imagine, you think it's really hard to find that group for Wailing Caverns right now. It's going to be a lot easier after this, when you've got 20 or 30 servers of people that might need to do that quest. Now you can come here and be able to do that without necessarily having such a hard time finding people to play with. Big part of this is also going to be a reward system. So we definitely want to reward people for using this system to encourage them to take a part of it. And the concept here is the same way in the LFG now, you can flag yourself as a leader. You can flag yourself as what your actual playstyle is. If you flag yourself as a leader and take a group through a dungeon in LFG, we actually want to reward you for that. So maybe there's some people that have never been in Wailing Caverns, but you're a pro at it. So you go into LFG and flag yourself as a leader. If you successfully complete the dungeon, you'll end up getting a reward for that. This is something we currently have on tap for patch 3.3.0. That's tentative. It's what we're shooting for. We think this is definitely something that we can get out before Cataclysm, though, for sure. And that's what we have for Dungeons and Raids. So I think we've got about 15, 20 minutes for Q&A. Thank you, guys.
right here for me? Look right in the camera.
Mind if I hold it? Lock on.
Yeah, my question is for additional instances cannot be launched on servers. And I actually have a solution for this too. You guys have already initiated the Battlegrounds queue from anywhere. Why not have a summoning stone just be a queue stone?
Okay, well, the cannot launch more instances problem, that's something that's right now we're having a problem with because literally so many of you are wanting to do instances. There is an active solution for this that's actually being deployed right now. Some
it's
servers,
in progress.
Yeah, some servers already have the solution. The tech that gets rid of that message that provides you with a whole lot more capacity to run instances is actually the same technology that allows cross-server LFG. Right now, like I said, some realms have it. They're deploying it right now on the rest of them. It should probably within a month or two, all realms will have it, and you guys shouldn't see that message anymore unless the loot is really good and you want to do a whole lot of instances.
And as far as your question about the summoning stones and the way that'll work, the concept behind the LFG system is definitely you're going to be able to use it from anywhere like LFG now, and it's definitely going to have a form of summoning. It's going to pull the players from the other instances directly to the instance to play with you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the LFG system is getting completely redone along with the cross-server LFG stuff. So.
Yes, Bradley Rush, Lompuck. Thank you for a great game, by the way, and the dungeons in particular. Just want to know, since you've done Oxnixia, are you planning to go back and do any others just like you've done this?
We currently don't have plans to go back and do anything else. Onyxia just came up, like I mentioned, I think it was just a special case because she was, our first raid boss, and we just thought it was a chance to give players that maybe didn't get to see her a chance to see her and actually have it be worth something, and then also a chance for players to maybe relive a memory from where they had, maybe got that first piece of loot there to go back and do it again. I definitely think it's something that we would only do in a kind of a special case scenario.
One other thing. One statement, just one statement. It's for the Alliance.
So the Sons of Hodir, they really loved me when I went and polished their helmet and stuff, but they didn't care when I saved their dad. Are you going to bring reputations back in raids and make them worthwhile again?
Reputations in dungeons and raids are definitely something that we want to bring back in a different way. I mean, I think you could see the evolution of that a little bit through Lich King with the new reputation system where you could wear the tabard and earn a rep by doing heroic dungeons that way. We've been having a lot of talks about how we want to implement rep into these new dungeons. Unfortunately, we don't have Alex here. He's one of the guys that's actually heading that system up. So we have plans for that, but we don't really have any more details on it right now. But we definitely want it. It's something we want to do.
First of all, thanks for making a great game that's ridiculously addictive. The question I have is the progression of how raids have played out since Vanilla WoW was single target DPS on a more of a very strong elite mob that's pathing around to now it feels like it's an AoE fest. Almost all of the in-game instances now it's grab 15, 20 mobs, everybody AoE, everybody AoE. Is that going to be a continuation going forward where it's more AoE focused, or are we going to see a chance for some classes to really shine at their single target DPS and non-boss encounters?
Sure. Definitely there was an evolution towards AoE DPS, especially in 5-player dungeons where a lot of people, they just group them all together and go to town. As you mentioned, it's not just an issue of single target DPS, it's also an issue of crowd control. We actually gave most all the classes some form of crowd control, and then most players stopped using it because they didn't need to. There will be some adjustments on our end on the encounter team. We will provide a little bit more casters. A lot of the dungeons had a preponderance of melee mobs that tend to group up and make it easy to AE. We also will adjust the raids as well. I mean, any ads fight will lend itself towards AE, but there are boss fights. We do try to provide that variety to have boss fights that are more about single target DPS, just working on the one boss. So classes that specialize in that can shine more.
One of the things I noticed is that at this point, Nefarian, Ragnaros, Onyxia, they've all come back, and that we've already done Naxxramas again. That leaves one big 800-pound bug in the room from the leftover old 40-man instances. I'm just wondering if there's any plans for the Silithid threat.
We currently don't have any plans to beam back on Karash at all, or Cthulhu. But I think you bring up a good point, and one good thing to mention here is that Onyxia was definitely brought back with just an update, whereas if you look at what we're doing with Blackwing Descent, or if you look at what's happening with Ragnaros, those are going to be completely brand new instances, new bosses, new fights. You won't see anything from the original stuff there. They're brand new. So definitely they're influenced by that stuff, and we want to carry that story on. But for the players, we want it to feel just completely like brand new content. From the mountain.
Hi. Yes, in the mountains. So a lot of hardcore raiders feel like Sunwell was really the pinnacle of that hardcore raiding with Muru and Kill Jaden. We understand that Muru especially was too hard, too much of a gateway boss. And that's what hard modes were supposed to represent in Ulduar, is things that the hardcore raiders could do so everyone else could still see all the content. Are the nerfs and the tune downs that you've brought what you wanted hardcore or hard modes to be initially?
Tuning is always a pretty tricky thing. We definitely, as you said, we definitely want the normal modes to be super accessible. We tuned some of those fights in Ulduar were actually too hard for normal modes, so we tuned those down. Some of those nerfs affect the hard modes as well, so that happened. We're also just constantly looking to see. We do want the hard modes to be beaten as well. We don't make content for it not to be beaten. You know, people thought that, you know, Yogg plus 0 was unbeatable for a while, and then it suddenly got beaten, and we were very happy. Yes. So we're really just sort of looking, again, we're always looking at feedback, seeing how players are doing, what they're thinking about an encounter, and we're actually playing the game as well. Like, we'll go in and do it, and sometimes, you know, things on the ground don't seem quite what we thought they'd be, so we make small adjustments. We're really just sort of committed to making sure that it's doable, it's fun. The hard modes are hard for the players that want to do the hard modes, and the normal modes are there for everyone to do so they can see all the cool content.
I think it's important to note that the hard modes, the way they work now, definitely aren't set in stone. It's definitely a little bit of a moving target. I think you've seen us try a couple of different things with hard modes, and we definitely want to find the one that works best. Just because we might have had one way that they worked before doesn't mean we won't try to change them and make sure that they fit the way we want them to work.
Yes, hi. I'm currently in Cuties Only, ranked 3rd US, 11th world. I had a question regarding like attunement quest lines, and if there's any plan to bring those back similar to the original Onyxia quest line for attunement, or even like BT High Jaw quest lines.
It's a possibility. It's something we occasionally talk about when we bring up a new raid dungeon. For the most part, we've sort of gone more towards the let's let people see content. But then if it's the right place and the right time, you might see something like Crusaders Coliseum, where bosses unlock every week. We've got there's various mechanics we can use, whether it's an attunement quest and so forth. Really, it just comes down to what's right at the time. And we have sort of gone more towards the let people see the content as soon as possible. Because we know people play with a lot of alts. You know, it's cool the first time, but maybe it's not cool the second, the third, the fourth time. So that's sort of where we are with attunements these days.
Hi. With the story of Arthas finally coming to a close, are we going to be treated any sort of special cinematic when he's defeated? Because he deserves so much more than the typical beat him, he falls on the ground, says a couple lines. Is there anything special that you have planned?
100%.
Yes.
It's going, I mean, it's, when Metzen was up here earlier, I think he kind of tried to prelude to it a little bit. It's going to be awesome. I think there's no way that you guys are going to be disappointed. We put a lot of work into sealing up the storylines that are happened across Icecrown, and you're definitely going to see that when you play through the raid.
how extensive is your internal raid testing? And did anybody internally kill Yogg Zero pre-nerf? And what type of challenges are the Coliseum hard modes going to be presenting compared to Old War hard modes?
Sure. For the 10-player instances, we actually we round up designers. Do that just like I was talking about how we have, like, the encounter team is 5 people, so we do all the dungeons. We actually try to do the 10-player raids as well. We grab people like Corey, other leads, other, like, hardcore raiders to try to get, like, their opinions on it. For 25 players, it's hard to get 25 designers together, but QA does actually do all those raids. They also do the 10-player raids as well. It's pretty much so impossible for a group of QA to reach to the overall skill and coordination level of the best guilds in the world. So no, QA didn't do Yogg Zero. They got spanked pretty hard by Yogg +4 even for a while. But the feedback is still, we actually sort of treat QA as more like not a top-notch guild, but their feedback is important because there are guilds who have the skill level of around our QA. So when it comes to the harder stuff, that's where we try to, like, rely a little bit more on PTR. There is, of course, bug testing that goes on with that to make sure it all works. But then to answer the second question, as far as hard modes for the Crusaders Coliseum, I don't think you'll see those to be as hard as the hardest Old War ones. Something we sort of started to realize about just player skill in general is that there's this huge spectrum of skill. You've got the very best skills in the world where Yogg +0 really pushed them. Memoron before some of the nerfs with Firefighter. But there are a lot of people that want to do hard modes and probably could do hard modes. They were able to do hard modes in the beginning of the instance. They want to do that stuff hard. They want to feel good. They think they're, really good. So we're probably not going to do it quite so hard as Yogg Zero anymore. We'll push it back. But there'll still be a huge leap up from the normal modes.
All right, we have about 5 more minutes left.
Shout out to JetX of Impossibilium and Thorium Brotherhood. My question is, you mentioned that we'll be going to Vashir, and there are 2 dungeons there. Are there any plans right now to expand to Nazjatar or see an Azshar encounter, or will that be farther in the future?
Yeah, currently there's no plans to go to Nazjatar for this expansion. I think storyline-wise, you're going to hear more about that, though, throughout the playing through the Sunken City storylines, as well as the quest lines that will be in the Abyssal Maw dungeons. You'll definitely learn more about that, but that content doesn't necessarily fit exactly what we're doing there right now.
I'm a really big fan of the dragon fights, and it seems you guys are too. Our guild actually serves Alexstrasza, so when she showed up in Wrath, it was a big deal. Malagos fight was a big deal. I'm curious if Sartharion is getting lonely in Wormrest Temple.
We'll see.
Possibly.
Hello guys, I have a question about you bringing back old raids and dungeons, like you brought back Onyxia, and introduced the new items, the old items that you upgraded. Is there a possibility that with the old raids, hard modes might reward you with the old tier 2, tier 1, maybe dungeon set 1, dungeon set 2 looking PCs, like that?
Something that's come up. We've talked about it. I think it just comes down to what we think would be most valuable to the players. Is it worth the time to go back necessarily to AQ, for instance, and convert it to a 1025 and all the loot? Maybe one day it would be, but I just think for us it didn't necessarily fit what we wanted to do for this expansion right now. But I think that's never out of the question. Yeah. I mean, it's open.
All right, I think that's all the time we have. Sorry, guys.
So close.
Please, I know.
It's so
Please
fun.